Okay. Um, so the other thing that came to mind was he mentioned Zach a few times about having a show on Shady Pines Radio. And he's mentioned it to us, he's mentioned it on the show towards our listeners. And ultimately, I think one of our meetings could be like our Thursday meeting, for example, could be a radio show on Shady Pines. Um, and the reason I'm suggesting like our meeting is because then we're already doing it anyway. And it can just be like, right now it's the Word of WOM is the name of that meeting. And it can essentially be what we found this week, because it's our wrap up anyway, right? And our next steps. So what we found this week in the process of building our art um, art business, and what we can maybe play some music or other things to share with each other that we thought were cool. Like, we can add in a little bit more kind of those kinds of things, so that it is kind of a little bit more of a radio show. Like, we would still like it would be kind of mostly meeting, but just with a bit of radio show kind of thoughtfulness, interestingness. Anyway, that's just a thought that came to my mind. I'm not saying like we need to do this. I'm saying like let's consider it.
Okay, let's consider it. I think there's a lot that could be um okay, so the thing that made me think about is when we talked to Zach, he was bringing up how I made a comment towards him that by witnessing what he does, I learned so much, right? And so that, like, just by observation, mirror neurons, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if people have access to see what our process is, that will help them better understand how to do their own process, and they'll be witnessing things that we aren't even picking up. For example, like how you and I take notes while we're doing this and we read back notes, like that might be an insight they'd never considered to do with their own team, right? um and so I do definitely think it's a good idea. And even on my previous team, Futurocracy, we talked about sharing our meetings with the public, we just never followed through with it. And the last thing that came to mind about you and I and the way we work, it actually reflects back to my class with David in improv, was this whole like, yes, because, for example, you and I, we generally agree to things, or at least give it a try. Or I definitely put effort towards it. Or sometimes, I'll counter. But one of the things to talk about in improv is it's such a showstopper if you say no, like
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, I just gave you something and you're not going to do anything with it. And the best improv scenes come from when you say yes or just agree and you're not
life
hemming
is
and
more
hawing.
fun when you're just going for stuff.
And I truly think that's where there's a powerful missed opportunity for a lot of people because they're not receptive to that creative energy and flow. So yeah, I like the idea. And let's see. Oh, okay. I have one more thing that I wrote down while you had skedaddled for a half second. So back to like story, right? In the end of the stories, the main character or the hero generally loses a lot of their mentors and all the other people who were helping them along the way, and they're ending up having to kind of do the last thing because they have no other um thing to lean on, another person to lean on. So your mentors kind of fade away. And I was thinking about the book Mastery and how there is this fading away of your mentors. Like they actually talk about like you're gonna have to step away from them because they might hold you back or whatever. And so when it comes to like the finale of whatever uh happens, there's going to be a moment where we have to really step it up in our own lives. And I think, I love that idea that I'm going to be pushing myself at some point because I have no other options. But in a lot of ways, like the catalysts push into the idea of use what I have as well. Um, you know, uh, if you are I just watched this movie and the woman, her place got broken into, so she had just moved to this city and she needed to use what she had to find a place, and so she ended up staying on someone's couch, but that she used a resource of knowledge of like this other person to find a resource, but she used what she had. And I'm thinking like that really concentrates your energies into a lot of things. But the journey that you and I are on, I feel like we're going to experience a lot of this stuff. Um, Statistically, inevitably, I think, depends on what genre we're in. I think the Save the Cat kind of makes me question which one we're in. I can tell you we're not in at least a few of them. But yeah, that's my thought.
My mic is muted.
Oh,
I noticed that the last few days you've been kind of sharing with me about this idea of catalyst and about this idea of, what would create a catalyst for me, or I'm just curious what yeah, your latest thoughts are on all that.
I think in a lot of ways, you proclaiming that you were going to sell a $10 million photograph was a catalyst in your life, right? And that led to you creating World of Memory Makers. That led you to creating a podcast, right? But you're now in a place where you've eliminated some extra stuff in your life, right? You've opened up space for something new to take place. And you're slowly building. So you might be further in the storyline, this particular one. I mean, even in a TV series, each episode can have a catalyst within the entire series, which has its own major, story beats and stuff. So they kind of fit into each other. And so, like, in my mind, I think that is one storyline, but each time that we meet and like have a new idea that we actually implement, that's something that is um moving our action forward, right? So even us like recording this and wanting to post it on Shady Pines, that could be its own like action. I've decided this is a thing that maybe launches us into a new world that we never would have stepped into, right? Maybe that launches us into the second act, you know. Um, so these are thoughts for me when it comes to Catalyst. It's doing something that brings that action that might bring us one step closer to the end goal. But you have a need. And like, that's the thing too. The main character has a very strong need to get something done. You have a very strong desire to sell this photograph, but it's not just this photograph. You have a strong need to help artists. You have a strong need to like, that drive is going to push you past a lot of your perceived limitations. And I care about the people in my life too, in my community. And like that's going to push me past my perceived limitations too. It's why I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to learn how to love money because I need to. But I had to have that strong desire that pulled me through.
Yeah, I am taking it all in. I
Learning storytelling is a very interesting thing for me because I see how it applies to real life, hence gamify life or questify life.
So what you sent me earlier, can you just explain to me what it is?
Are you talking about the beat
I'll look at
sheet?
it now. The cat.
Oh yeah, save the cat. Um, So essentially, in all the different story arcs of all films and novels, etc., it follows a certain cadence. And that's what that beat sheet is. And it kind of gives examples based on different films and or yeah, I think this one's based on films. And it's pretty much a map. It is a map of what to expect when going towards a goal. And they talk about this for making a film, but it's easily translatable to real life. And I think that uh we can kind of plot where we are. And I had tried this a while ago, but I didn't have the beat sheet. I sensed it, but I didn't know it. Um, but the more I research, the better I see it. And I sent it to you just because I kept talking about this different story beats. So I wanted you to have something to reference. Um, yeah, but some stories they take like 10 years to play out. I don't think our story needs to take that long to play out to different capacities. We
Well,
are
it's
much
already
more.
playing out. It depends how you define playing out. You
Yeah.
could play things out your whole life, but obviously the what you're aiming for is going to change as you pass a level, let's say in a video game, then you're in a completely different level, but you're still going for, you know, something.
Yeah,
It needs to
for
play
sure.
out, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's back down to that each episode can have a beat sheet, but so can a whole novel and a series in the novel or a season or whatever. And another thing they talked about when it came to beat sheets, when it came to the novel one that I read, was that you might have different beat sheets per character if you have two main characters in the genre, such as buddy love, right? That's like two characters' lives are changed because they met each other. And, usually it's a love story, but it doesn't have to be a love story. It could still be a different kind of love. And so it depends on who's narrating the story. How much does one character know about everything that goes on, who's um really following the story. And so if you have two main characters, you're probably going to have two beat sheets, but you probably need a beat sheet too if you're going to have a whole series, and that's going to be a larger overview of what you're trying to accomplish so that you can put these smaller little stories in it. And so but usually one story, one beat sheet, because one character who's your main character has that one like character arc. But other characters can have their own story arcs that you create, because sometimes you might have three main characters and they all weave together. The Help was a movie slash book that was brought up. I don't know if you know that one.
Oh, well,
But there's at least three main characters who all had their own story arcs. They had to have three beat sheets for that because they all interwove in the end. But like um they were, you had to think of it from that many perspectives. And I think most people can only see from their own perspective. you know I can witness your life and understand maybe an outline of what you're going through, but I don't see the internal struggle you're going through because I don't have your internal narration, though you can share with me some of the things you're going through, but that means you have to probably be very aware of what you're going through, and you probably won't know all the different things until you've gotten to a certain point. Or maybe you could use it to help you predict where you're going next. That's my thought. Sorry, I've been really meditating on these things a lot.
it sounds like it. So when you say predict where you're going to go next, how do you tap into that?
That's the one I've been leaning into. I haven't quite figured out how to do that, but um making decisions that change your environment will thrust you into a new act when it looks completely opposite from the first act, your normal life. For example, me preparing to go fully nomadic was my original life. But when I went nomadic, that's a whole different, it's a 180-degree flip of what my life was, right? And so I predict that I'm going to do this because I've planned for it. And that's actually part of the debate of like, you're debating on how to like get into this thing. Am I going to do it? Is it going to happen? Yes, it happened, right? And that becomes this new scene. And then the last act is yet another major the last act is a major transition again. So like when you're willing to do the big scary thing, you're going to have a new environment, and so you can plan out. I wonder if this taps into creating timelines, or a lot of research says create due dates for yourself for projects that you're doing, artificial due dates or whatever they call it. I wonder if it's tapping into this kind of thing because you're forcing yourself on a timeline to accomplish something by a certain date. Does that make sense?
Having a timeline is one of the most powerful tools that we have, because when I said I'm going to sell that photo by March 3rd, it created me to be like, I didn't have time to think. I was just had time to act. I just had to act. And so I really think that training is about bringing ourselves to a place where when we're in deep action and flow, we don't have to think about it at all. We just go and we just do. And we're showing up based on where our training, the level that our training brought us to as a baseline. And that's how we're going to be showing up. And so it's not about showing up at our best. It's about training ourselves so that our baseline is great, right? And I think people think about it the opposite way. They're like, training is to be always showing up at your best. Training is actually about making your baseline something that you're proud of, making your baseline something that is that when you're, let's say I wanted to sell the $10 million photograph and I say I'm going to do it within the next month. My baseline is so much stronger than it was when I made the original declaration that it's possible that I could actually achieve that. If I went for it the same way I went for it then, it's possible I could. Whether the question is, and so much of creation is actually, as you're saying, is that catalyst occurring. So either necessity knocks at your door, or you override necessity and you create the illusion of necessity in your mind. One of those two has to occur for you to be 100% in the goal creation. And you also have to have the deadline piece, because otherwise you don't really, how do you sail towards an island, a specific island that you can't see and you don't know what
Yeah.
direction it's in? If you can't see it and you don't know where it is and you don't have a compass, you know, you can't sail there.
Well, and like, when you talk about training in the story plot lines, they talk about how you you try to solve it the wrong way because you're using old mentalities to try and solve something. And each time you do something, you're moving yourself a little closer in the right direction. But that's training yourself. Like you've created a stronger baseline to try again after that, right? And so I think that interconnects. Yeah.
Like the research I've done in terms of knowing who might buy a $10 million photograph, the embodiment I've done in terms of having said the story thousands of times and saying and learning each time what works, what doesn't. The work we've done with WOMcast to be able um, to not let some of these fundamental challenges like artistic authority, faith, and communication get in the way. The physical training I've done with my personal trainer over the years, all of these pieces make it so that my baseline in terms of what I'm capable of now doing, and then also all of the initial project when we were doing the gem collection, um, I reached out to over 50 artists. I had calls with over 30 signed formal agreements, and we did a bunch of Zoom meetings. We held a public event. All this occurred. We had a WhatsApp group. I learned so much about what works and what doesn't because when I dived the heck in. But now if I go in next time, I would know like there's certain things, pieces, and communications that I need to be able to do that I was completely not even aware of last time. So again,
If
like just
you ever,
that's the
okay,
baseline I have now. I wouldn't have had that baseline if I hadn't have done what I've done so far.
you overcame your learning curve. I think, um, and you know, that kind of brings me back a little bit to use what you have. You know, you used what you had that you knew, and then you learned from that because it forced skills to be used that you hadn't used. And then you essentially can eliminate what didn't work and adopt new techniques to see what does work the next time you go. I feel very jazzed with this conversation we're having. I feel like this is like honestly a breakthrough for me in a lot of ways because like um it intertwines story and personal development and action in one's life to overcome obstacles in order to achieve your goals in a way that makes so much more sense that it feels like intuition at some point, you know, like, oh, I see it now. Oh, that makes sense. And it's like finally connecting all these dots that have been like in flux. So this has been a very powerful conversation.
Yeah, and this I did a post earlier on Facebook. I think you saw it, and someone commented and they said, "I don't fully agree with this." And I never said anything about agreeing or disagreeing. She's creating that like I don't know if I'm looking for she just creating that she wants it to be known that this is not something that she fully agrees with. But I'm and I used to let stuff like that affect me and make me feel like, oh my gosh, like I said something that someone else doesn't agree with. But now I realize I wasn't even creating it in that context. She's coming at it from that context, but I'm not creating it from that context. And so what I hear when she says that is actually this, what I hear is this triggers me, and I think it triggers somebody because they're they're currently grappling with it and they're denying that this affects them when it does. And so I actually see that now as an opportunity for a potential client when I used to see it as somebody hates me. That, how big of a shift is that? I'm like,
That's
oh
a
my
big
gosh,
shift.
if I go deep in this conversation, this person could end up hiring me. You know what I mean? I used to think, like now I'm gonna deal with this emotionally for a while. You know, like that's the distinction between my baseline before and my baseline now.
You know, and the book too, Mastery, talks about that woman who had really bad lecturing skills, right? And she took what the haters gave her as criticisms and used it to her advantage and actually became a really well rounded speaker, and it was like night and day for her. And I feel like, you know, you seeing this person differently allows you to even adapt different points of view into what you're creating that could reach somebody who has this mentality, you know, um, and allows you to explore something that, as you said, might have triggered you in the past, you know, or created this emotional reaction. but you're in a place where you don't give permission to other people to control your emotions.
Yeah. And that took a shit ton of self work and investing in myself. I would not have been able to get to this place without having invest literally somebody paid someone to train me to be able to, because it was so powerful for me. Other the internet, like, and I know for some people, like, it ruins their day, one little thing online. And it's a reason why most people don't engage online anymore. They just scroll. People used to post things, way more people used to post things, way more. And I think that a big reason why not is because of the emotional impact of sharing things online and not actually investing in ourselves to be able to be with that in a way that doesn't hurt us and traumatize us. On that note, we're wrapping up here. I think it would be cool to end by like drawing attention to each of our senses.
Cool.
So, do you have something you can touch that you can just, do you have an object or something you can just touch?
Um, you know, my squishmallow that my phone's on is
Perfect. Yeah. Whatever is most obvious. So just touch it if you have it and just feel it. And then just let me know when you feel complete.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have something you can smell?
How about some strawberry jelly?
Yeah. I'm smelling my essential oil. What are you getting?
Strawberry.
Strawberry? That's good.
But it also triggers a little bit of like, you know, childhood strawberry peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you know.
A positive memory?
Oh yeah.
That's great. Do you have something you can look at? See, you can see.
Yes.
I'm looking at the sky. How about you?
I forget what it's called. It's I have a little wind up teeth chattering thing that I painted a gold tooth. That's what I'm looking at.
I love that. Do you have something you can, I don't know if you have something you can taste, but do you have something you can taste?
We'll grab the peanut butter. I finished my tea already, so
I'm gonna have the last sip of my tea here. Oh, it's still refreshing.
I forgot how long it takes to eat peanut butter.
Yeah, peanut butter is a thing. And the last one is sound. So maybe tune into your soundscape. It's a plane flying over.
My cat is eating food.
There's usually sounds occurring, you know, like it's wild to think. Since sound is my sense of the day, Tuesday is going to be sound. Uh, uh, like when my microwave was going off and different sounds, when I couldn't get to them right away, like I was noticing how it was impacting and landing in my body. So it's really cool to actually presence myself to a different sound every day as an activity to be more present to how these sounds are impacting me or these different senses are impacting me. Because ultimately, since we have five plus at all times, like sometimes it's hard to even be aware of which, you know, which one's being affected. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. What a meeting we've had today.
Yeah.
And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah. Final thoughts?
Um I'm just gonna meditate on using what I have today. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to meditate on the idea of catalyst.
I love that.
All right.
All right, well, ta-ta for now.
Bye.